Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshop, where we get together in the middle of the week and talk technology. Today, we are going to be talking about home theaters. Well, maybe not to that extent, but we can make your home area be like a theater. I do want to begin on record of saying that we are very keeping thoughts for all of our APCUG member groups and their members in Florida. We do have one from Central Florida who is here now, but he will not guarantee that he will be here in a minute or in 5 minutes. We just don't know. So we are all thinking of all those members, especially Huey, who's in the worst of it right now. And I'm sure that we all have friends, and like me, I have family in Florida, so we're always watching for them, because I've got one in Tampa where it's hitting now, and then Thursday afternoon, Jacksonville, when it's going to hit them. Today, we're going to be talking about home theater, and we've got an excellent panel that's going to put together all the information that you would need in order to convert your family room or a separate room into a home theater. We're going to start off with somebody who doesn't need any kind of introduction. He's been with us from the very beginning as one of the Zoom team members. He's also from the Oklahoma group, the Computer Club of Oklahoma. Bill James is also an advisor for APCUG, and he's our expert on home automation and Windows. But today he's going to be an expert on home theater. So Bill, I'm going to give it over to you. If you remember to unmute.
Thank you, John. What does hi-fi mean? The term hi-fi or high fidelity dates back to the 1950s. It was used to describe audio equipment that was able to faithfully reproduce music. It meant that music sounded like you were listening to the band or the artist in person. The definition of high fidelity has evolved as audio equipment and the ways we listen to music have gotten better. What counts as hi-fi today? Well, it's not so easy to say. In the 1970s, the definition of hi-fi evolved with the introduction of stereo sound. With the addition of a second speaker or a second channel, stereo was able to add another layer of realism to the music. It made such an impact on the recorded sound that people started referring to a hi-fi as stereo. Back in the 1970s, speakers and audio sources were terrible. The best audio source available in the home was a live FM broadcast, but it was all mono until 1961. LPs became available in stereo, but scratchy and pre-recorded stereo reel-to-reel tapes were also popular. But at 7.5 inches per second quarter track with no noise reduction, they had as much hiss as records had clicks and pops. There was no way to bring the real sound of the studio or stage home unless you hauled a professional 35 millimeter magnetic recorder weighing about 1,000 pounds and reaching from floor to ceiling, and had access to original master reels. As an alternative, you could bring an Ampex 350 home, only about the size of a wash machine, but you still needed the master tapes. There was no noise reduction yet to quiet the hiss. Solid state gear was so dry sounding in the last days of tubes that it helped compensate for the warm, muffled, woolly, and ringy speakers at the time. There were no dome tweeters, just 2-inch paper cones. Some people used electrostatic tweeter panels, but with big 15-inch bass reflect cabinets on the bottom. Speakers were cloudy and obscure sounding. Dolby B type noise reduction was introduced in 1968. It effectively reduced hiss on audio tapes. From the mid-1970s, WB became standard on commercially pre-recorded music cassettes, even though some low-end equipment lacked decoding circuitry, although it allowed for acceptable playback on such equipment. Most pre-recorded cassettes used this variant. VHS video recorders used WB on linear stereo audio tracks. In the early 1980s, CDs came along and eliminated a lot of the extra noise, like the crackling and other imperfections that vinyl is now sought out for. Perhaps more importantly, CDs were one of the first mainstream digital audio formats, which helped pave the way to today's digital streaming age. Merging audio and video, home cinema, also called home theaters or theater rooms, are home entertainment audio visual systems set up in a room or backyard of a private home to reproduce a movie theater experience and mood using consumer electronic grade video and audio equipment. After the beta versus VHA videotape wars, VHS reigned supreme. The other video formats was the RCA Selectavision Competence Electronic Disc, or CED video record record player. The RCA player was followed by the Philips Pioneer Laserdisc player. The format used by Philips was the precursor to the audio CDs that followed. With the months, it was clear that the RCA system was doomed, having sold only 100,000 players by the end of 1981. CED players were also made by Hitachi, Sanyo, Toshiba, and marketed under 11 brand names, including JCPenney's, Realistic, Sears, and Zenith. The CED video system limped along until 1984, when RCA finally pulled the plug on the format. When all was said and done, with the sale of 550,000 units, RCA lost up towards 600 million on the project. In the 1980s, home cinemas typically consisted of a movie pre-recorded on a Laserdisc or VHS tape, a Laserdisc player or VCR, and a heavy, bulky, large screen cathode ray tube TV set, or CRT projector or real projector TV. In the 2000s, technological innovations in sound systems, video player equipment, and TV screens and video projectors changed the equipment used in home cinema setups. It enabled home users to experience a high resolution screen image, improved sound quality, and components that offer users more options. For example, many of the more expensive Blu-ray players. In 2016, users could also stream movies and TV shows over the internet using subscription services such as Netflix. The development of internet-based subscription services meant that 2016 era home theater users did not have to commute to a video rental store as was common in the 1980s and 1990s. Nevertheless, some movie enthusiasts continued to buy DVD or Blu-ray discs of their favorite content. Netflix today continues to offer DVD and Blu-ray services. In the early 1950s, and portable music takes a giant quantum leap with the invention of the tiny semiconductor known to one and all as the transistor. No longer shackled to heavy, cumbersome vacuum tubes, along came tiny radio receivers called transistor radios. The sound was tinny, scratchy, and they were prone to picking up static. But nobody cared. It was the 1950s. At last, you could listen to your favorite radio stations wherever and whenever you liked. It was cool, it was rebellious, it was a revolution. In the late 1960s came along the portable cassette player recorder, And for music on the move, things were set to change. The cassette player was battery operated, had a reasonable sized speaker, and could be listened to in the comfort over separate headphones. Unsurprisingly, they became very popular very quickly. Unlike the portable but bulky 8-track, the cassette player with its user-friendly C30, C60, and C90 minute cassette format, it was the perfect complement to home taping systems. At last, you could record your favorite records and radio shows, play them back in the garden, the park, or at the beach. By the 1970s, it was every school kid's dream come true. So by now we have the car stereo. We have transistor radios, and we have the 8-track and the portable cassette player. Teenagers and parents alike were all using affordable portable music devices wherever and whenever they wanted. But in a few short years, things were about to get much better. One of those companies was Sony, who in 1979 came up with the revolutionary Sony Walkman, a miniature cassette player designed to clip onto a belt and listen to an accompanied headphones. The Sony Walkman was an instant hit and coincided with the trends of jogging and aerobic exercise. Also arriving on the scene in the mid-1980s, by the way, of New York's bulging hip-hop scene, was the boombox or ghetto blaster. The bigger, the better. These hybrid portable music centers focused on volume and clarity of sound, often included a tape-to-tape features and other gimmicks. So with the Sony Walkman and the ghetto blasting boombox, by the mid-80s, everyone could afford to take part in this latest accessorized pastime, listening to music while on the move. Surprisingly, what happened owed a big debt to the past, as we're about to find out. In 2001, Apple released the first iPod on an unsuspecting public. The Apple iPod was an instant game changer in the portable music market. The users could now upload thousands of songs from Apple's huge popular iTunes platform onto a single device. And unlike a Discman or many other portable devices, you could choose specific tracks from albums, building your own playlist to listen to while traveling or at work or at the gym or to play at a party. In 2004, 3 years after the initial release, the iPod dominated digital music player sales in the USA with over 90% of the market of hard drive-based players and 70% of the market of all types of players. iPods dominated the market for more than a decade. But as this presentation has shown, in the world of mobile music, nothing stands still forever. A huge shift on the horizon and coming up fast. Smartphones had been lurking around for quite some time. Early prototypes with obscure operating systems had been introduced way back in the 1990s. Cell phones could stream, download, play music, and still pretty much a pipe dream. However, Samsung was the first to innovate with the Samsung SPH-M100, or what they called the Uproar, launched in 2000, and considered to be the first mobile phone to have MP3 music capabilities in the US market. The data speeds of competing models would find large files difficult to manage because phones of this period concentrated more of their camera technology and other features. Motorola, remember them from the early car radio days, introduced a flagship Rocar model in 2005, incorporating a support for media player features. Today in 2022, data speeds are phenomenal, along with new technology and faster connectivity, 5G, which allowed the pipe dream to become possible. Music's migration from MP3 players to smartphone was now a reality. Music streaming is now the norm, with CDs, LPs the exception. In 1993, Reuters reported on an interactive video system being planned by AT&T and IBM. Rival systems that would replace a trip to the video store with a push of a button on your TV remote. An executive for Blockbuster, remember them, noted that in his stores, there was 8,000 titles available, adding that you can't get that out of an electronic display. Today, in 2022, a Plex server running on your computer can host music, photos, or videos and stream them to your TV. You can use the mobile app to browse your library, pick which media to stream, send it to a television via Chromecast or DLNA, movies and music streaming in 5.1 audio. Now that we've gone down memory lane, the big question now comes back to our initial query. What does hi-fi mean? The tricky bit in modern day is that so many mediums, CD, vinyl, streaming, even tapes are in play and have different formats, can have different fidelities. In the past, hi-fi was generally defined as audio that was CD or vinyl quality, 16 bits, 44.1 kilohertz. Today, you can listen to a higher resolution audio files such as 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, or even 32-bit, 384 kilohertz. So, should the bar for hi-fi go up in response? Both lossy and lossless compression reduce audio file sizes, but they differ in methods and results. The main difference between lossy and lossless audio compression is that lossy compression removes some of the audio data permanently, while lossless, which is the preferred, does not, reducing audio quality and only removes the non-essential data. Audio files are like wine stewards of music. You need an experienced palate to know how to pick up notes of pear and oak in a fine wine, just like you need an experienced ear to listen to for the crisp highs and the full-bodied reverb in a song. So if you were asked 5 of the industry expert and audio enthusiasts for their modern definition of hi-fi, and of course, there's no one answer, but here's what they have to say. Charlie Randall's co-CEO of the Macintosh Group said this: when used to describe equipment, hi-fi means to be able to reproduce recordings of all types, CD, vinyl, and streaming. To be considered hi-fi, the equipment must be capable of playback with very low distortion, low signal to noise ratio, dynamic headroom, and channel separation, just to name a few. Dave Evans, the co-founder of Audio Engine, says nowadays, hi-fi is kind of a moving target, depending who you ask. Many would say that higher the better, but keep in mind the bit rate word depth number does not always tell the whole story. Quality of our fidelity also depends largely on the original recording. For example, how well the original sound was captured. Brand Bargenquist, of the co-founder of Audio Engine, says, my take on high fidelity is that wireless audio and streaming, mostly from phones, have changed the audio game for the better. It's really about everything along the audio stream, from recording, mixing, mastering, digital file format, encoding and decoding, and finally to the consumer gear we use to listen. So I think overall, we're in a much better place these days as we have access to a great sounding music with the convenience of wireless streaming from our phones using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Mike Moffat, the co-founder of Skit Audio, says this: a dictionary definition of fidelity is the degree of exactness with which something is copied or reproduced. So it follows that high fidelity means you get lots of fidelity. Alex Moreau, a brand director for APCUG Acoustics, says the original proposition and purpose of hi-fi has all but gone. That is exact, except for the hardcore among audio enthusiasts who are still making tiny incremental changes to a component audio system, seeking the ultimate sound, adopting higher and higher resolution replay sources. So in summary, the early 1980s, CDs came along and eliminated a lot of the extra noise, like crackling and other imperfections that vinyl is now sought out for. Perhaps more importantly, CDs were one of the first mainstream digital audio formats, which helped pave the way to today's digital streaming age. In the 1990s, quality took a detour as the age of Napster and the iPod ushered in the dominance of compressed digital audio files like the MP3, which destroy data in their quest to get file size down. What hi-fi may be a point of contention, but does Bluetooth compression fit the bill? Many of today's streaming services, specifically Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, and Qbuzz, offers a lossless streaming, meaning you can listen to digital audio files that are the same or better audio quality than CD. Do these services' digital audio fidelity equate to the old analog formats? Is it worth investing in separate components and speakers when so many people are content to listen to tiny speakers? Only your ears can tell. John, back to you.
Very good. Good background on all of that fancy words and letterings. At this time, we're going to do something a little bit different that we don't normally do. As we said earlier, Mike Unger is sitting in the middle of the storm's path, but we don't know when it's going to hit him. It could hit him now or in a little bit. So we've taken out what we hope to be an insurance policy, and Mike has recorded his presentation so that if he was in the middle of it and gone, well, we would have just been sitting here with nothing. So Mike is from the Central Florida Computer Society, which is in Orlando area and in the path right now. And he'll be with us as long as he can, and with us in the end for the roundtable and then the Q&A. But I'm going to, since I'm not where the storm is, I'm going to show his video, and then he's able to interject anything else that he wants to along the way.
Hi, I'm Mike Ungerman of the Central Florida Computer Society in Orlando, Florida. If you are watching this presentation in a pre-recorded video, I've evacuated our home as Hurricane Ian is forecast to pass overhead or nearby. So I've recorded this so that the show can go on. I may be able to join you all during the discussion period using my notebook, but if not, Ray and Brill have my comments for that segment. In this presentation, I will cover the various speakers that can be used with a smart TV or a home theater receiver as a recommendation to watch video and listen to audio content with the highest realism and fidelity. I will use my own equipment as one of the references to explain the process I used to configure our family room where we sit to watch and listen to multimedia content. Here's the agenda I plan on covering. It's by no means complete, and I'm sure will generate questions. So please ask them in chat to Judy. If I'm online, I hope to answer them live. If not, I'll answer them when I receive them from Judy, and she'll get them out in the show notes. You've probably seen a lot of numbers bounced around when it comes to describing the number and configuration of surround sound speakers and associated protocols. Let's go over the basics as I understand them. Even as late as the revising of this presentation, I was looking up the various definitions. They're based on an article on Wikipedia. The link is shown at the bottom of this slide. And by the way, all the links that I use will be provided to you in supporting documentation. So let's take a look at the speaker channel protocols. They're made up of 3 numbers, sometimes with a decimal between them. The first number is the number of main or traditional speakers, such as you will see here in this column. The second number is the number of subwoofers, in that some configurations do support 2 subwoofers. The third number is the number of height or presence or surround speakers. So for example, 1.0 means monaural sound, single speaker, like your radio. Stereo systems would be 2.0. 2.1, you're adding a subwoofer to a stereo system. 3.1, you're adding a center channel. 5.1 is really when you start getting into surround sound that the various different Dolby protocols can support. So we're adding a left and right surround speaker, which can be a rear channel or additional surround. And then if we go and add a 2, such as 5.1.2, we're adding 2 additional surround speakers for Dolby Digital encoding, such as Dolby DTX or Dolby Atmos. Usually for Atmos, they're in the ceiling, pointed down towards you, or they're up front, pointed towards the ceiling and bouncing back down towards you. 7.1 is a more traditional sound configuration with 7 speakers, including 2 surround sound speakers and a subwoofer. And again, here's the link that you can find this information on Wikipedia. So there's many options to listening to content that comes from the various sources through your equipment to your ears. And headphones could be such an option. I'm not going to address them today, but we'll focus on the TV itself and then on the speakers that may attach to your system. So before we talk about speakers, what about using the TV's own speaker? It's certainly an option you can try out and probably should do when you get a new TV that's you're just testing out, or you're getting ready to put a new sound system in and you want to listen to the TV speakers first and then compare them to the new sound system. So let's take a look at the various speaker options that you do have if you decide you want the high fidelity that Bill has already spoken about and the realism of various sound protocols that are available with a home theater or a modern smart soundbar. I've chosen to browse Crutchfield's website to give you a tour of many of your options. Whether you choose to buy from them or not, at the bottom you see a direct link to the page that I will now browse as I share my screen. Here we're on the Crutchfield website, and the link that I have given actually takes us to the surround sound speaker systems and shows the configurations that I've already chosen, such as I've sorted them by price, low to high, just to give you a chance to see what's there. As you'll note, the very first item is a surround sound speaker system using a sound bar. I'd like to address, though, using individual speakers first, and then take a look at some sound bars afterwards. So let's scroll down. I only want to see things that Crutchfield has in stock. And I'd like to look at the type of front speakers that I want in my system. So I'm going to choose separate speakers. As I said, you could choose soundbar. So let's just look at separate speakers first. I'll scroll up to the top. And you can see we're starting out with a 5.0 surround sound speaker system. So note that there's no 1 here. There's no subwoofer. What that's then relying is all the individual speakers to provide woofer type speakers or woofer generated audio. And we're down in the $600 price range for a complete system. Now we get into a 5.1 system, which has the capability to give you surround sound. We've got a subwoofer. We've got left and right front speakers. We've got a center channel speaker, and we have the subwoofer. And it continues on down with the individual speaker types. Lots of them are available. And as I say, Crutchfield is not the only site that you can go to get information like this, but you're going to want to take a look at a number, and preferably even go into a big box store where you have a number of options, say like Best Buy, and take a look at them. All right, so let's change from separate speakers to sound bars. Now we go up and we can see the first one we saw before. It's using a sound bar with its embedded speakers to give you that left, right, center, and even the subwoofer, which is generated by the speakers that are designed to produce the bass frequencies. Actually, I take that back. I do see a subwoofer in the picture. This one, the Sonos, doesn't have the subwoofer shown, but it's set up to do the bass speakers. So again, if you go down through this, you can see the various different options. Prices going up as they increase in value and capability. Here's one with a subwoofer and just the sound bar, which can still do everything, including Dolby Atmos, which is pretty good. And once more, if you have the opportunity to listen to these, you probably want to do it before selecting just based on price and specifications. So since we took a look in our browsing at sound bars, either as standalone speakers fed directly by your video and audio source, or actually fed by a home theater receiver, today's sound bars are getting much more sophisticated with computer processors for digital encoding. In a similar fashion as evaluating your TV speakers, you're going to have to evaluate whether a sound bar is sufficient for your purposes or a full surround sound system with individual speakers is better. Let's take a look at a video comparing 5 modern sound bars. It's fairly long, so what I'm going to do is just show the first 2 as examples.
Hi guys, welcome to Best Gadget. In this video we will show you a list of 5 best Dolby Atmos soundbars to buy on Amazon 2022.
So let's take a look at my home theater system as an example of a system using individual speakers and individual components, and how I place them in my family room at home. Almost all home theater systems center around a large screen TV. Some are centered around a smart projector and a screen, which I'm not going to be covering today. Last fall, I purchased a new Sony 75-inch TV shown here in a pre-Black Friday sale from Best Buy. I'd been evaluating various TVs for a year following the last such sale and pretty much knew that this is the set I wanted. Due to time limitations, I won't go into all the details of its capabilities. You can look them up by searching the model number online. So here's my home theater receiver housed in an open console. By coincidence, I learned that Ray has the same model. It's a full 5.1.2 or 7.1 capable sound processor. And as I will show you, has a number of configurable options for the speakers that I've installed. Note that I have a smart UPS with voltage regulation to the right of the cabinet. It's very important to me to protect against power interruption surges and voltage sags that can hit and ruin an expensive set. My streaming devices include a Roku Ultra, a PlayStation 3, and a Tableau networked digital video recorder. So as the system is set up, it's in my family room. The family room is consisting of a vaulted ceiling leading from the low edge, which is here near the top of the picture, back to where we sit at the other end of the room, which is the high end. So what we're looking at is my left and right Sony towers, a center channel, which is a Sony center channel, has dual speakers. Then my Dolby Atmos configured left upper and right upper speakers, which are pointed towards the ceiling. So I could have configured it differently. These two speakers could have been in my ceiling, or they could have been on the side of the room pointing inward. It's just I chose to have this set up that way due to the room configuration. The subwoofer is not in this picture, but it's to the right along the wall, pointing in towards the center of the room, but it's basically a non-directional speaker. Okay, here's my command center. The two speakers mounted on the back wall. They're the rear surround speakers. The system considers them surround and not rear, but the way they're sitting, they're rear. I normally sit here. My wife, when she joins me, is sitting here. And, you know, we've balanced them out and we've configured them and get pretty good coverage during this area. A better configuration, if possible, would be a longer wall and better separation. And if my wife doesn't join me, I'll move my command seat, if you will, forward about 3 feet towards the home theater system, which is actually about 12 feet from where I'm sitting. So I've dabbled in hi-fi since I was a teenager and configured and wired up many audio systems. So for the task of wiring and setting up my home theater amplifier, I did not avail myself of professional installation, which I did do for my TV. And I do strongly recommend for those without similar experience to get a professional installation of a home theater amplifier and all of its configuration settings included. In the slides that follow, I'll show you the rear panel of my Sony receiver, which even for me was a bit confusing at first. And I actually had to reconfigure things after my first attempt, after I ran into some difficulties. The main front speakers connections are shown in this red box. Primary left and right speakers have two connections each, a red for positive and a black for negative. Be sure and wire all your speakers the same way, and don't get them reversed or your speakers will be out of phase and could cause loss of sound amplitude, or even give you a static or improper information coming out of the speaker system because of the cancellation that happens when you're out of phase. Center channel speaker, fairly straightforward. Again, red and black, and keep the wires set up the same way as you did with your front speakers. Now, the label on this connection confused me. It says speakers for 5.1 CH or channels, since I was looking for rear channel connection for the speakers that are mounted in the rear of the room. And so I had to make sure that the sound of the speakers connected to these connectors did in fact come out of the rear speakers through the configuration of the receiver's audio channels, and test them out with some of the content to be covered later in the presentation. Next, knowing that I wanted my last set of surround speakers to be used for Dolby surround sound to include Dolby DTX and Dolby Atmos, the last set of speakers is attached to these connectors. Note that it says 7.1, which is a traditional configuration, or 5.1.2, which is Dolby Atmos. Last, I connected a single coaxial cable with an RCA plug on it to the top connector of the subwoofer panel. Depending on one's actual configuration, the receiver does support 2 subwoofers, but I don't believe I can have 2 subwoofers supported if I have the 2 surround sound speakers using a portion of the amplifier circuits. Future research would be required if I wanted to do this, but not in my plans. So much of the modern receiver's audio channel configuration is conducted using its firmware and software menus that access the firmware. My Sony was no different. In the following slide, you'll see some information I found online which helped me in the process, which was initially confusing to me. As I stated previously, professional installation would have accomplished this for me with little effort, but I gutted through it. So here's a page from a Sony help form. Although quite detailed, taking the procedure step by step will get the speaker patterns properly established, especially the highlighted text if you're displaying the setup menu on the TV screen, or if you're using the front panel menu that's on the amplifier itself. And in my case, I did in fact want the surround sound speakers attached to the appropriate wiring connectors in the back of the amplifier to be front Dolby speakers. That was my setup. So the nice thing about having Sony equipment for my TV and receiver is that I can display the receiver's front panel on the TV if I set the TV source to the receiver. This may be similar for other TVs and receivers, but I'm not sure if they're different components, if they are different components for the TV and the receiver. Here, I've brought up the receiver's menu and chose the speaker setting, since I've already run through the easy setup that was recommended, which wasn't so easy for me. And I eventually wound up with the speaker setting anyway. So the speaker settings menu will allow you to pick the various speakers. Listed here are some of them, and define their characteristics. Also shown on the screen is the menu selection for defining the back terminals, which I have already chosen and shown in the previous slides for the back of my receiver. You can choose to make a speaker large, capable of very low frequencies, and it has its own woofer included, or small, cutting off the low frequencies usually reserved for speakers containing woofers or standalone subwoofers. So in this case, those 2 front towers will be large speakers and using their woofers. And then my center, surround, and height will be small, leaving the bass frequencies to the other speakers, basically the subwoofer. Once the speakers are connected and configured on the receiver, I recommend avoiding the urge to rush in and turn it on and start processing audio sources, except maybe then to confirm that something is coming out of the speakers and you see video on your screen that correlates to the audio that you're listening to. Then I recommend running through the amplifier's calibration routines. I didn't want to change the configure of my own receiver's speaker calibration, so I searched for and found a good video showing the process. Today's modern receivers come with a microphone and cable to connect to the receiver to detect sound coming from each speaker and calculate the proper displacement and amplitude settings. It will also detect out-of-phase speakers as mentioned in the wiring slides. Let's take a look.
Hey, what's up guys? I want to just make a quick video showing you how to auto-calibrate your Sony DH790. Just received this Best Buy Black Friday deal, and I did not find the manual to be too helpful. It was talking about some menu that should pop up when you first start the system. I did not get that menu. But it is an easy step on how to auto-calibrate it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is plug the included mic into the calibration mic input on the left side of the receiver. Then put the other end where you typically sit. They recommend ear height. Then you're going to want to take the remote control, hit amp menu. From here you can select various settings. I'm still digging into these. The one you're going to want to select though for the calibration is ACAL. Press enter. Then press enter again for auto calibration. Enter, enter. Now you'll select your pattern. I think this defaults to 7.2, so you're going to want to use the up and down arrows to select your specific configuration. Mine's 5.0, I'm still waiting on my sub. Then you hit enter, and then hit enter again to start. From here it'll count down, and then once this gets to 0, it'll start. And that's it.
So following the automatic speaker calibration process, you can then access another menu to see what values have been set. I recommend listening to some of the test videos that will follow in this presentation and revising this section to make any adjustments you may wish to improve the sound. In this case, the calibration of my setting for the subwoofer I found was too low. It was actually below 1 decibel, and I increased the value. I also adjusted the levels of the primary left and the primary right speakers after listening to the test videos and the various audio content. But we're not done yet. Now we have to check out your audio and video, yes, but there are additional settings that should be accessed both on your media source, like a TV, streaming device player, and so on, and your receiver. So here's the screen of my Sony TV, and it's running the Google operating system. You see that I've already selected the audio output to audio system, so it's not using the inside, the internal speakers. Excuse me. I've sent the sound mode to Dolby Audio, and that ensures the receiver can detect proper sound protocols, 2.1, 3.1, 5.1, 7.1, 5.12, and so on. You can drill down in the sound settings and find other settings you may wish. One of them, for example, was advanced auto volume. That's supposed to level sound passages between soft and loud audio that you may get, like maybe commercials, but I really don't see that affecting any of the sound that I've presently got. Okay, back to the receiver. Take a look at some of its settings and see if there's any other adjustments. So on my Sony receiver, I discovered I have an AFD setting, and that's automatic field or sound field detection. This lets the receiver change its sound decoding based on what the source is sending it. I find that most times it's very effective, but many times I do override it, especially to boost dialogue and source material that's focused mostly on the dialogue in a movie or at, say, sporting events. Now it's time to explore the features of your home theater. And you may actually want to know, are you getting what you think you have available to you? A vast library of videos are available on YouTube. I spent several months searching for such videos and adding them to a playlist, which I'll share with you in the coming slides. My YouTube playlist link is at the top. This list that link will also be provided in the supporting materials. On the following slides, I will show you some of the videos that are on this playlist, again with their individual links. But we'll go to the playlist itself, where they'll be pretty much in the same order. After I go through this in the following slides, I'll go to the playlist and play portions of them for you. So the videos that are listed here, the first 4 are some basic tests, stereo 2.1 to see if you're actually getting your left and right channel subwoofer, stereo test with the subwoofer, again, stereo test 2.1, but this time the frequencies are shown, and an audio video sync test. This group of 5 demonstrates some of the Dolby Digital sound protocols. As these tests get more sophisticated, some may not play all the channels you have available to you with your own equipment. And that could be an artifact of how they were recorded and uploaded to YouTube. Some of these on this and the following slides have links on the YouTube description to download the sound audio files themselves instead of streaming them. Place it on your system using a portable flash drive if you've downloaded it and have a USB socket. Maybe burn a DVD if your player supports these same sound protocols, or listen through headphones and see if your system is actually producing the channels if your speakers are not. So here we're looking at a pulse-coded modulation for Dolby. We're looking at a Dolby 5.1 surround. We're looking at it in 4K, it says, with 60 frames per second, a spatial sound mapping demonstration, and a 4K HDR DTS surround sound. So this again is going to test the 5.1, the 7.1, and if you had it, even 9.1 channels. This group of 5 is set for Dolby Atmos, and you can see that there are a bunch of them, and many, many more on YouTube. But I've found some that do seem to work for me and work fairly well. So it's just a matter of testing these out, seeing if you hear the results, and perhaps having to download the original source information. Not on today's agenda, but included for your review, is 5 videos from a very large number of quality audiophile videos with great music. Good for just listening if you like, but actually testing the music reproduction of your home theater system. Any configuration of speakers or protocols should play them and adequately demonstrate the ability and quality of your system to process music. I find them very good for testing the differences among speakers. So you can find many more just by searching YouTube for audiophile tests. So let's take a look at my playlist and listen to portions of the demos that I've listed in the previous slides. Here we're at the link of my playlist. You can see the first one is sitting here. We'll get up to it. And it's doing a sound test left and right. We'll just do a quick listen to it. And there's a couple others that you can listen to as well that will test different frequencies and combinations of sound sources. This audio video sync test is a good one to run to see if the sound that's coming over your audio system matches the video that you're looking at. So notice that the sound is initiating and then coming down to see what displacement is actually coming here. Of course, you'd probably see this if you were looking at someone speaking and see it, you know, that their lips are not moving. Here is a good 5.1 pulse-coded PCM, pulse-coded modulation, not requiring Dolby interpretation of the compressed audio, and a good test to see if all the speakers are working in your 5.1 system if you have it. Of course, you have to be able to read whatever's here. And I can't hear this now and could not hear this on my system. They were sending a signal out to the subwoofer, and I think it's what's streaming. Then we go into the additional Dolby capabilities, spatial surround mapping, which gives you some additional capability. This says the best sound Dolby Vision demonstration. And here's a Dolby Atmos demo, which I found to be very good. It's 10 minutes long, but I'll only play a short. They're recommending a headphone, but it does work on my system. That should have sounded to you like what you hear if you go to the theater and you get the introduction. Scrolling down, you can see I have many others there, and then I go into the audiophile test that I liked, and I'm not going to play those. I do also have some of the videos on this playlist that some I included in this presentation, and some you may wish to see all the way through if you wanted to look at the Dolby Atmos soundbar. So today's home theater has an amazing capability to bring you entertainment to your living room, and realistic video, realistic sound. Getting the best audio quality from your equipment requires a good configuration with verification testing so you hear what you paid for. During Q&A, if we've left something out, please mention what you might like to have answers to. And if you'd like to see additional presentations on home theater, some of the components we haven't talked about, expanding our coverage to talk about TVs, Blu-ray digital players, projectors, etc., let Judy know, and we may do a presentation similar to this in the future. So back to you, Ray.
And it's back to me. And Mike is still here, but we know if he would have tried to do that presentation, the weather would have been whatever. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Mike?
I did notice a lot of mismatch in the synchronization, and I guess that's because of the recording and then the playing of the recording of a recording.
Yeah, look good on my side. All right, thanks. Now we move to the third phase of our presentation on home theaters, and it was mentioned earlier by Bill talking about Plex servers and stuff. So Ray Baxter, who most of you should know, Ray is the president of APCUG, and he's the guy that you send your club membership to because he's also the treasurer. But in his spare time, he's also heads up the Payson Area Computer Meetup Club, which is solidly an online group. And so I'm going to turn things over to Ray and learn a little bit more about some home theater.
Oh, thank you very much, John, and you've given me two tough acts to follow, but I'm going to do my very best. So I'm going to start to share my screen here. And here we go. Plex. Plex, it can be a free streaming service or it can be a media server. You have the opportunity to choose which one, or maybe be like me and choose both. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the collectors versus what I call listeners, viewers. And we've kind of evolved into that in our society today. Regarding the movies and music we enjoy, most of us fall into one of these two categories. There are viewers, listeners. And these are the folks today that do not want the responsibility associated with owning a collection. The biggest issue might be storage, and will gladly pay a monthly fee to stream movies and TV shows. And the same, of course, is true for music, as we can now listen to millions of songs in a variety of genres. Then we have collectors, those who want to own the media and be able to watch and or listen for no additional cost after the purchase price. And perhaps more importantly, a collector also takes pride in what they have accumulated. So let's talk about first Plex as a streaming service. You can use Plex for free streaming of over 20,000 on-demand movies. Now these are ad supported, but not as many ads as broadcast TV. There's free streaming of over 130 television channels with a TV guide built in so you know what's on. And then of course for music, there's access to Tidal, and that provides previews only of 60 million streaming tracks, as well as thousands of music videos. The full version of Tidal through Plex is available for a small discount over the regular paid version. Now, Plex, going further as a streaming service, they offer this new feature called Discover, and it lets you manage multiple streaming services. So this is what it does. It allows you to search for a specific movie or show title to see if it's available on any of your streaming services, thus eliminating having to spend the time searching them individually. So you just tell Plex what streaming services you subscribe to. Could be Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, HBO Max, and you know there's many, many more. Plex will now only search the services you subscribe to and let you know if the movie, TV show is available for you to stream. Then there's also the Plex watch list, and that lets you add a movie title to your watch list so Plex can let you know where to watch it when it becomes available and is released. So some things to know about Plex. There's the free version, and most of the features I'm going to be talking about of Plex are available in the free version. Now, there are a paid version called Plex Pass, and that gives you some additional features I'll talk about later. And that's about $5 a month or $40 a year or $120 for a lifetime contract. Now, what Plex Pass offers in the additional features, they include, one, the ability to allow friends and family to view what is on your Plex server. Now, so speaking of that, now let me talk a little bit about Plex as a media server. Now, the media server allows the collector and me to store, organize, and access all the media that I may own from one centralized location. Now, this could include a collection of theatrical movies and TV shows that I may have copied over from DVDs and Blu-ray discs. It could include the music from audio CDs, as well as music-related performances from DVD and Blu-ray discs. It could be the photos and the home movies I've taken either recently with a smartphone or decades earlier with a camcorder or film camera. So again, it's allowing me to centralize all of this type of media at one location, and I can watch it now on the largest screen in my home. Now, before building my Plex server, I had about 1,500 or more ripped CDs and many MP3 music files I downloaded over the years. They were in various locations on multiple computers and flash drives. My hundreds of movie, Blu-ray, and DVDs were not backed up. And while my family home movies were digitized, they were not organized and could take much time to find a particular scene or event. And then the 10,000 plus photos I've taken during the previous many decades, they were scanned and organized by year, but could only be viewed when sitting in front of the computer. So by installing the Plex app on my other computers, TVs, portable devices, cell phones, etc., I now have numerous ways to access my media collection from anywhere. And with a subscription to PlexPass, I can give access to my server to family and friends anywhere they have an internet connection. So here's what I've learned as I built my Plex server. Pat myself on the back. I think I did a good job converting my media from hard copy and analog to computer files, but I could have been better at keeping them organized. In many cases, scanned photos did not have names associated with deceased relatives, who my kids would never recognize from the photo alone. Many of the home movie files contain scenes that could have been taken months apart. Imagine going from a snow scene to one at the beach. These needed to be edited into individual clips. And over time, I've saved various types of media on the various hard drives I own. Most were started for backup purposes, but now I'm discovering some items have only been saved in one location. So your Plex server must always be on for the content to be accessed. That's pretty obvious. Now, Plex is legal with licensing agreements common to the industry. Now, here's an important part. The Plex user must hold the license to own or view the media they provide themselves. What does that mean? You can't sell or even give away your discs that have been saved to your server. My attic now contains a good portion of the DVD and Blu-ray discs that used to be in the living room. So how did I end up with a Plex server? Well, I used an old computer. I had a 7-year-old HP Envy desktop who was running the latest version of Windows 10, and that was my main PC until I replaced it in early 2021. A very serviceable computer, 16 gig of RAM, and I had 2 hard drives, a 2 terabyte solid state drive, and then a 2 terabyte hard disk drive. But the AMD A10 processor does not meet Windows 11 requirements. And it's a large tower model, which means it would have been pretty expensive to ship if I were to try to sell this on eBay. So the Plex app can run on a variety of other operating systems besides Windows. That would include Linux, Mac, and those associated with NAS. NAS is a network attached storage device. Here's the key. The CPU is the most important component, and Plex recommends a minimum of an Intel i3 core or faster. If multiple people will be streaming simultaneously, then a CPU with multi-core performance may be needed. Now, how do you convert a movie disc to a computer file? Well, there's several software products on the market today that will convert your discs. There are 2 free ones that I use. I use Handbrake for ripping DVDs, and I use a program called Make MKV for Blu-ray discs. Now, using Make MKV, the movie file often ends up being quite large. What do I mean by quite large? 30 gigabytes or more is not uncommon. So to save drive space, some users perform a second converting process with Handbrake that reduces the file space needed, but also may slightly decrease the video quality of the finished product. What I've chosen to do, rather than have that extra work, I purchased 2 portable hard drives. I have a 6 terabyte and a 12 terabyte, total of 18, to hold my data, including the large Blu-ray files. As you would expect, there are many YouTube videos that explain how this process works for those interested in pursuing this further. Now, I mentioned MKV, and some of you may never have heard of that file format, but it's been around for years. Here's a chart from a website called renelab.com, and you can see it has words like the quality is high quality and high definition. This is an older chart. The media now can be played on almost any modern media player that is in the MKV format. So don't be concerned about that. That is a good format. Now, here's the problem that some of us have. The optical drive, well, first of all, the optical drive for DVDs do not play Blu-ray discs. We all know that, I think. But also, newer laptops no longer offer optical drives at all. So here's what I did. The optical drive in my HP Envy was only capable of playing a DVD. So I purchased this external Blu-ray DVD drive burner, and that connects to the computer either via USB 3.0 or Type-C. It's a fast connection option, allows for the Blu-ray ripping process to be 6x. 6x means 6 times faster than the actual play time of the disc. So what are some of the benefits of a Plex compared to a DVD player? Well, just like CD players, DVD units are starting to disappear from homes as younger viewers opt for a more modern way to watch their favorite movies. DVD players are mostly mechanical units and will break down after much usage. There's no more DVD case storage to contend with. No more worry about damaging or misplacing a DVD or Blu-ray disc. Now, I had close to 400 DVD and Blu-ray discs in my collection. I'm now actually rediscovering movies I forgot I had. Or here's something interesting. There were many DVDs that were rarely played, not because they weren't any good, but because they were stored on the bottom shelf of the storage cabinet. And apparently I was too lazy to go all the way down on the floor with a flashlight trying to see the titles. Now, you have flexibility with streaming your movies from Plex. With your movies converted to a computer file and saved on the server, you can view them from streaming devices that have the Plex client, to include smart TVs or those with the add-on devices like the Amazon Fire Stick or the Roku, as well as your smartphone. Now, if you enjoy using streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video to watch your favorite movies, then you'll appreciate a Plex server for many of those very same features and conveniences as you watch your personal movie collection. So when you name your movie media, you have to take note to add the year, typically in parentheses, after the movie name. This will help Plex differentiate movies with the same title. And as an example, there are 3 movies titled A Star is Born. Now, what Plex then does, it goes out and it scrubs the internet, typically IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, for a match, and then includes a copy of the movie poster and other related information about the film and the starring actors, just like you would see in a streaming service. Now, all your movies can be kept in one folder, and Plex can separate them into specific folders such as action, comedy, romance, etc. So why is Plex better than maybe a DVD or a Blu-ray player or even a streaming service? Well, number one, it easily retrieves and plays a movie on any number of devices, televisions as well as computers, tablets, smartphones, and you can do this at home or away without the need for an optical drive player. As I mentioned before, share movies with family members and others who may live across town or across the country. Now I finally have my movie collection backed up. Now, most streaming services add and delete movies each month, so you can't always depend on a favorite to be available to stream forever. Now, again, that's another important laws to be aware of. It's copyright and the fair use doctrine. So the legality of copying a legitimately owned DVD Blu-ray is confusing, to say the least. One law, that's called the fair use doctrine, allows commercially created movie discs legally purchased to be copied by the owner once for archival purposes, backup purposes, and personal use. So you are allowed to do that. However, the DVD copyright laws, they clearly state that if you crack the DRM, that's a digital rights management code within the disk that was placed there to prevent copying, actually cracking that code is illegal. So, based on the above, it becomes a personal decision if this is a process you want to pursue. So recap, Plex allows me to centralize my media so it's easily accessible. All my media files are just a few clicks away on the remote. My home movies and photographs, most taken over several decades, can now be brought up quickly and shown on the largest screen in the house. The movies I've owned can be watched with a few clicks of the remote as often as I like without having to pay for the privilege. And my music files, both audio and video, can be organized in any number of ways to watch and listen to. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Copied music DVD as individual chapters. So this is a 2-disc DVD with 28 tracks. Is a Jimmy Buffett concert during Labor Day weekend in 2005 at historic Wrigley Field in Chicago. I purchased this used DVD at a Goodwill thrift store for the grand price of $2.99. So let me see if I can show you how this is going to play. So I'm opening up my Plex server. Now I probably have too many categories listed here, but I'm going to just go right to music videos. And then I have 358 so far. And I'm going to go down the list to J, for Jimmy Buffett. And as I scroll down, here is the concert he was in. And you can see I have all these individual clips for all the different songs he sang. I'm looking for one in particular, and I think it was Brown Eyed Girl over here. Now, of course, I'm not going to play the sound because that might get us into copyright law. So let me see if I can let him talk a little bit.
And it might be September, but our job is to keep it summer as long as we can.
So you can see that was clear. I brought it up quickly. I was able to play that little clip, and I can do that with any of these other music videos that I have. And the other one I was going to do, and I think I'll go right to it now, is under movies. Again, all my movies are listed here. And I'm going to go down to a Star Trek movie that I like. It's called Star Trek Into Darkness. And up pops the information about it, a little bit of a synopsis here, who the writers and directors are. Here's the cast and crew. We have some reviews that are mentioned here. Other what they consider related movies. If I click on the Chris Pine actor, it'll then tell me the other movies in my collection that he stars in. All of this information, as you can see, just a few clicks away. So let me close that down. There's the Star Trek. As I said, I used Handbrake to use that as a video transcoder to copy it. Many YouTube videos show exactly how that process works. And when this is the website for Plex. It's very simple, www.plex.tv, and that'll give you all the information you may want to know about Plex. I check that website out, as well as the many user videos on YouTube for further information and details. So that's the end of my segment. I'm going to close this down and stop sharing now. We close this too, and top share.
Very interesting. I've always been wanting to know about how that Plex server worked, and a lot of us do have an old computer that could use as that server. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Quite welcome.
Now we're going to go and do a little bit different, as long as Mike can stay here, this will probably, because he's going to be live, cause us to lose him. But at this time, Ray and Mike and Bill are all going to get together and talk to us about tips and tricks and best practices and things like that. And so I'm going to do a little trick here so that you can always see all of them. And we won't jump back and forth between whoever's talking, because they'll all be there so you can see them interact with each other. So I'm going to turn it over to the three of you. And Mike, hopefully you'll stay with us for a good while and share with us some of those tips. No, we don't want any ticks. Tips and tricks and best practices.
Thank you very much, John. And in the announcement for today's event, we did say we were going to do talk a little bit about tips and tricks. So this is why we've decided to make this kind of situation and see how it goes. This is the first time I think we're doing this on a Wednesday workshop, so this might be the wave of the future. Bill, you came up with some of the good topics, so why don't I turn it over to you for now, and you can mention the first one, and then we can give our impressions. You need to unmute.
Still muted.
Thanks, Ray. I'm sorry about that.
Good.
One of the things that I remember when I was helping some friends of mine set up their hi-fi was the involvement of the spouse. One of the things that you have to remember is that, you know, this is a huge investment, and not only the monetary aspect of it, but also you're talking about large pieces of equipment. And as Mike pointed out, once you get that set up, it needs to be calibrated, which means that it's going to be more or less a stationary installation. So if you have a spouse that likes moving furniture around, that's not going to happen. So I guess my point here is just to make sure that you have spousal buy-in as to what you're doing and have them involved in the process. I think Mike had something else to say about that as far as having a spouse involved. Mike?
Yeah, spousal or partners' desires, besides moving furniture around, my wife's discussion point is, why do we have all these remote controls? And before I got this Sony, I used to have a Harmony all-in-one remote control, but it wouldn't control my Roku and it wouldn't control my Sony PlayStation. So she told me, you're getting a new TV and you're going to get a new amplifier. I want to have one remote control that does everything. So the nice thing about having a TV and a home theater amplifier, at least in my case, is that the Sony's TV remote will do about 80% of what the home amplifier requires when you're watching content. I can turn it on, turn the TV on, the amplifier comes on. I can bring up, using the Google operating system, I can bring up what I want to watch, and it will play with the proper sound protocol through the home amplifier. And even with live TV, when I change channels, the audio follows along as well. So I'm happy, and I don't need the so-called universal remote, and my wife is happy that, or I'm happy that my wife is happy with it, I should say.
Yeah, this could be titled "How to Keep a Happy Marriage Continuing." I'm fortunate that my wife is still working, and she has her own business, and a lot of it involves using technology. So she considers me the always on call tech support. And for that honor, she also said, whatever you want to do pretty much is fine. We do have remotes. We only have 4 on our coffee table, and she's mastered them all, sometimes better than mine. And when I said, would you like me to get one more remote that does it all? She said, no, I'm happy. I don't want to learn any more remotes. So we're good where we are now.
One of the things about when you're considering buying your equipment, speakers should be where you spend your money on. Is that, in my opinion, great speakers can last a lifetime. So where other electronics change with evolving technology, speakers don't necessarily do so. So if you've got, when you are purchasing your equipment, I would spend my money on speakers first, and then on the amplifier or receiver, I would spend less for, because you can always upgrade those. But speakers, in my opinion, are the most important aspect of your system.
And I tend to agree with Bill on that. However, before I had this large screen TV and before I got the latest Sony amplifier, I was still using speakers I acquired almost 50 years ago from a Navy exchange in Sasebo, Japan. Those things went with me, you know, back when I had built a 27-inch Heathkit, and then started getting all the different amplifiers and the different components that go along with them. So I just naturally assumed, you know, I'm just going to use these same speakers. Well, I was disappointed because the improved sound quality that I was getting out of what was streaming from the TV and what the amplifier should have been capable of, all of a sudden started to sound a bit hollow, and I wasn't getting the real Dolby audio effects that I really wanted. So my point, I guess, is if you're not satisfied with what you've got, consider trying to buy all your speakers from one brand. And if possible, in my case, Sony also makes speakers and the TV. If you've got an LG, you may not be able to get your speakers the same, but it worked out very well in this case.
Yeah, I agree. The speakers are the most important component. No matter how fancy your other computer home entertainment components may be, it's the sound that comes out of the speakers that you ultimately hear. And if it's poor speakers that can't reproduce the sound properly, you're not going to be happy with it. I did experience once, when I moved from California to Arizona, my everything, including my speaker system and home entertainment, was in storage for almost 18 months. And when I finally unpacked them and started hooking them up, the speakers didn't sound the same. And I took off the covers and checked them out, and I could see tears in the cones of the speakers. And apparently what must have happened is my belongings were kept in a container that was kept outside in the hot California sun. They really heated up much more than they ever would in a home environment, and started to crack them. And as much as I tried to tell that to the folks who had the storage, I could not get them to reimburse me for them. So I ended up buying new Infinity Primus speakers. That's my setup. It's all of them but the subwoofer. The subwoofer is a Philips that actually I purchased used and works just fine. And but I reaffirm, speakers are your most important component.
You know, as Mike alluded to, is that speakers really should be, if you can, from the same family, because what you want is you don't want to hear the speaker, you want to hear the music or the content. In other words, the speaker should be transparent. In order to achieve that, is that they really should be from the same family, so they can offer a seamless and tonal balanced natural sound. So when you're looking at speakers, try to keep them close to within the same family and the same series.
I'll deviate just a little bit from what we had discussed before, guys, and my comment on this, since we talked about, getting speakers from a source, is how do you get the speaker from the same source? How do you decide on it? So the biggest thing for me when I was doing this was reviewing the specifications. And I said, if I'm going to get Sony speakers, what are the specs? I went on YouTube, and there's plenty of reviews on any brand of speaker and ratings. And then the next thing I wanted to be able to hear them, if at all possible, because so many times when we do our online purchasing, you go by the specs, you go to Amazon, you order it, you got it. Well, okay, I guess I'm stuck with them. So at least since I did get my Sony speakers from Amazon, the return policy is excellent. And had I not liked them, I could have taken them back, gotten credit to buy another, either another speaker in the Sony brand or go to something else of all the same brand. So if possible, try to arrange to hear those speakers, whether you do it at home or whether you go to a big box store.
Again, we're repeating a little bit of it, but yes, buying the speakers and having them all from the same manufacturer does help a lot. There might be an exception. The subwoofer doesn't necessarily, in my case, I have a different subwoofer. As long as it has that bass sound, doesn't need to be from the same company. And maybe if you have a second pair of surround sounds that don't play that often, they might also be from a different manufacturer. But you get the best monetary deal when you buy one package rather than shopping around for different speakers from. So that is the way to go.
One thing I found too is that being on the bleeding edge can have consequences. Technology can change within a year, which can render your hardware and firmware obsolete. Good case in point, I got involved or interested in hi-fi and stereo when I was a teenager. So I've gone through a lot of different equipment over time. And one of the things that I remember is that I thought the Laserdisc was going to be the end-all, do-all format, because at the time they had the best picture and there was a lot of hype that was going around about them. So I bought one along with a bunch of Laserdiscs. I think I have 100 or so Laserdiscs, including a Laserdisc player. So when I upgraded my TV, I found that my Laserdisc no longer worked. So I just kind of be prepared that everything is not going to remain the same, and don't be, try to hold out for the latest and greatest, because I don't think that's going to ever occur. Because now I stream all my videos, so I don't even use any hardware. Like I have a CD player I no longer use, and I also have a Blu-ray player I seldom use. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, in my case, the only item I purchased hardware for home entertainment that didn't work out was a Betamax. When they came out in competition with the VHS, I felt the Betamax was better, had better quality, etc. But you know what? It didn't have the same the same amount of time to do a recording. And I had a friend who went out and bought the other version, and I asked him why. He goes, "Because I can record an entire football game." So I think that was probably one of the major reasons that people ended up going up with the VHS system.
All right.
I think I was going to say, I think we sort of merged some of our topics because we've got two together talking about obsolescence. So I'll sort of jump down to my comment on obsolescence and say that in my case, I really wanted a 3D TV. I was impressed with this 3D that I saw in theaters. Avatar was an amazing movie, and I rushed out to buy a 3D Blu-ray disc of it, even before I had a 3D player and a 3D TV and an amplifier that could support it. And I was just waiting, for the prices to come down when the 3D TVs came out. I waited too long, and there are no more 3D TVs. So that's my obsolescence item. Thank goodness, even though it's not 4K, my current TV can convert my 3D version, and I can see it in pretty good high def.
Yeah, I actually did buy a 3D TV from Sony back about 2012. Waited a bit to buy the glasses because they were overly expensive. Ended up with about 6 or 7 3D discs and watched them once each. And because it was just too much trouble to convert it, you had to make a change in the settings for it to work with 3D. You had to get the glasses, make sure they were charged up. I just want to sit down and watch the movie. So while I thought 3D, like you, Mike, was going to be the wave of the future, and I think it will be someday if you don't need the glasses to wear. But
It's probably going to be holographic. You know, and I go out to the Consumer Electronics Show, or I did go out every other year. And every time I would go, somebody would have a booth set up that was demonstrating, you know, holography. And there's a guy that called himself the Home Theater Geek that's got his own YouTube channel. And he was on Leo Laporte's show, and he was saying it's arrived. You know, he's actually walked into the presentation room and the whole presentation was around him, holography. So whether that really happens or not, be the wave of the future, who knows?
it's happening already in the music industry with ABBA and what they're doing in England. Yep.
And Mike, you mentioned some other things about consider purchasing professional installation. You want to expound some more on that?
I alluded to that in my presentation earlier. When I first shopped for my TV, I decided instead of buying it from Amazon, I wanted to get it from Best Buy because there's a local store that's about 5 miles from my home. and it was a Black Friday sale that I really had to jump in and take the advantage of. And I did not want to take my old Sony TV off the wall. It weighed about 150, 160 pounds. I'd need 2 or 3 people. And getting on in years, my lifting strengths are not quite the same as it used to be. So I said, okay, I went to the store, I saw the TV, I liked it, and I talked to the manager, and he said, are you going to get professional installation? I said, yeah, let's get the professional installation. So it took about 2 weeks from the time that we made the arrangement. The Geek Squad showed up. They took my old TV off the wall, packaged it, and there was a haul away fee, and that was fine. Put the new one up, did all the wiring for me as I showed on the connections. The E-arc, which we really didn't get into, is a critical communications protocol for the cables. We had the right cables for it. Checked it out, showed me how to use all the basic stuff. I still had to, play around with it afterwards. Cleaned up after themselves and left. Well, fast forward 6 weeks and my TV stopped working. So again, hindsight, I was at the store at the time I bought it. They said, do you want the warranty? I said, well, I've got a Sony warranty for a year. Why not just do that? They said, well, if you get our Geek Squad warranty, since we're doing the installation, you don't have to worry about taking it off the wall to get it to Sony. Sony isn't going to come out to your house and take it off the wall. Well, that's true. And Sony, if they replace the TV after it's off the wall, you're going to get a box at your front door and you're going to have to put it up or call us and charge again. So I figured all of that out and I said, fine, if I'm going to do it, I'm just going to cover it for 5 years, which means anything fails, including lightning, surges, whatever, and I get a new TV set. Well, I'm glad I did it. As I said, 6 weeks later, middle of January, black screen, nothing. And about the only thing I can say is, like many insurance policies, it takes an awful long time to get collection and get it all done. It was March before the set was actually finally replaced. But looking back on it, there's many things I've purchased that I've never used the warranty on, but this is one thing I figured was worthwhile doing.
I'm from the other school a little bit, and there's no right or wrong here. It's personal choice. I don't have the problem. The big TV I have is a 55-inch, and I can still lift that up, and it's not attached to the wall. It's on a stand, so that's wasn't an issue for me. And I kind of factor it in over the years. I have not purchased the warranty coverage. I wonder how much money I've actually saved in that category. So no right or wrong here. We all buy insurance for one thing or another and hope we never have to use it.
It's one thing.
As I'm experienced. Yeah.
Right. It's what you feel most comfortable with. I know trying to move for me to move a 55-inch TV is kind of difficult for me. So it takes, in my case, I need two people, another person. So if you're going to buy one and bring it home in your car, have a friend or someone to be there to assist you to get it out of the box. And even if you're just planning on setting it on a table or console. So just kind of take those things in consideration. Do we have any other comments or any other tips? Because we're at the end of our topics.
No, I think we covered them well, and I'm glad we promised people we'd have a little bit of tips and tricks, and this was it.
Yes. So thank you, guys. I think we did an adequate job. So I'm going to turn it back over to John. It looks like we still have time for Q&A.
I would think so. We can open things up for,
Does anybody have any questions for either of the three? If you have a question for one of them specifically, please let us know. Unmute yourself. Kevin, you're on.
Yes, okay, there it is, unmuted. Thank you guys. That was just so wonderful to see all the stuff you guys do and did, and just thank you so much. One of the things that bugs me to no end is to see the words in the video not matching up. And I have tried for certain people to fix that, and I find it very frustrating. And the tools that are in place that I have found on TVs, primarily older sets, to be woefully inadequate, and would love to tap into y'all's knowledge about when cable TV or other things don't match, what's the best way to get everything to match up where the voice and the picture are matching.
I know that some TVs have a setting in their menu that's, I believe it's called sync. I'm not sure, and it depends on the brand of TV, that you can go in and adjust that so that you can get the dialogue and the picture to sync up. But I think it's based on the model of the TV or the streaming device that you own. I don't think there's anything that you can use across the board. Ray and Mike might have some other thoughts.
Mike was nodding his head, so can you add something to that?
I'm going to concur with Bill. My Sony does have in the settings under sound and the advanced settings, it does have a synchronization, and I can put in delay. I can go in either direction. I can retard it or I can advance it. And then if for some reason that doesn't work, there's a similar, and again, this is my modern Sony receiver, which would be the same one that Ray has. There's a setting under the Dolby Audio settings where you can also do something similar. Before I go playing with that, though, again, modern equipment, they're computers. What happens with computers when they don't work? Sometimes we just reboot them and son of a gun, the thing starts working again. So there's actually a shutdown procedure where you can either restart your set or do what they call a power on reset. And each one, I guess a reset would be like a warm restart of a computer, and a power on reset or power off reset, you literally pull the plug on the TV and the amplifier, let them sit for a minute, and then plug them back on, and then try again and see if you're synchronized.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Richard.
My question is, do any of you have anything else to say about remote controls? Because it seems to me that years ago, remote controls would only duplicate whatever was on the TV or other equipment. And now that additional functions are on the remote control, and that those can only be used by using the remote control. Or am I wrong?
You're correct, Richard, that a lot of the new devices are strictly tied to the remote. And so you're kind of tied to that. I think Mike mentioned the Harmony remote, which is made by Logitech, and it will give you a lot more functionality. And I think in their database, they probably have every device that has been made. And so you can sort of tailor that device to do whatever you want it to do. So you just might want to take a look at one of those, and maybe that will assist you in some of your requirements.
Bill's comment is really good about the Harmony. However, they announced earlier this year that they will no longer be making any new ones, that they will continue to support the older ones, but they're not in the business of making any more new ones. So if that's the route you're going to go, you should do it sooner than later while they're still available.
There's a new device. I don't remember which one of the prototype sites where you can buy things in advance and support their development. It was one of the 3 or 4 that are out there. But anyway, it's called Couch Baton. So you might look that up and see if they're still available. However, having said that, my Couch Baton will not synchronize with my Wi-Fi. And I've been back and forth, to their tech support, and they've told me all the things I need to do. And apparently, to get the support I need, I'd have to ship it back to China because they don't have a US support center. So let the buyer beware. But that was another reason I went with the Sony, because its remote does, in fact, control my amplifier.
Cool. Thank you. George.
As I age, my hearing is the element that's probably the weakest. Is there any online graphs or tools that will tell you whether it's worth investing in better speakers or just give up on better speakers? And, should we be amplifying the high frequencies to compensate for loss of high frequencies, or should we be just not spending the money on those speakers that emphasize the high frequencies?
Well, George, my answer to that, I would let my ears be my guide. When you go to the store and on Audition speakers, the ones that sound best to you would be the ones that I would purchase. I wouldn't be concerned about, because one of the things, the first to go is going to be the high end as we age. And I think I'm at that point where I do not hear the highs as well as I used to. But my speakers are probably 30, 40 years old now. So I haven't been out looking for newer speakers, but I have let my ears be my guide as far as selecting ones I wanted to listen to, the ones that you feel most comfortable, one that gives the most lifelike sound. Remember, speakers, in my opinion, should be transparent. Say, for instance, if you have a trio, and that consists of a singer and a drum and a piano, you want to hear those instruments, and they want to feel like they're in the room with you. You don't want to, the speakers are immaterial. They should be not even in the equation. It's the sound that you're looking for.
Okay, thanks. Good presentation, by the way.
I'll give a little comment. I have friends, husband and wife, who have completely different levels that they want to hear the program at. One is much more hard of hearing than the other, needs it louder. The other one doesn't want that loud. They purchased a device that came with 2 headphone sets, and each one wears their own individual headphone set and adjusted to their liking. They use this mostly when watching movies, so they can really get the dialogue clear. If they're playing music or something else, then they wouldn't be needed. But that is another option in this day and age, that headphone sets are dramatically better than they used to be even 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just add that, again, with a modern amplifier and a modern TV, you've got settings on the amplifier and you've got settings on the TV that you can change the sound field. So, for example, if I watch a football game I have a sports setting on the audio for my TV, which then streams that to my amplifier. And I find that the amplifier is just using the center channel. And if that's not clear enough, then I can remove a little bit of the bass. I can boost the higher frequencies if needed with the sound settings for the amplifier itself, the bass and the treble settings.
Thank you. Greg?
Yes, am I being heard at this time?
Yes, it's your
Oh.
turn.
All righty, well, thank you very much, Judy. I appreciate all the work that you and also the other people here from your organization do. I have a different situation. My TV's kind of old, and I've kind of discovered Amazon Prime Video, and I appreciate which one of you, I think Ray, I believe it was, that presented about the Plex, and that's helped me. I'll see what I can do with that. I haven't heard anything from anyone about the possible use of signal processing devices. I've heard nothing from anyone about using an external sound card with a PC, which is something I used to do. Also graphic equalizers or parametric equalizers. I kind of feel turned off by the limited, bass, treble, and other settings that come with, that have those limitations, like sport or some of those other things. What do any of you ever see any need for like a graphic equalizer or an external sound card to enhance and create a greater fidelity, even a dynamic range expansion device? Any of you find any value in signal processing devices such as what I've mentioned?
I'll just answer quickly because I don't really have much experience there at all. You did mention equalizers, and almost all these units have built in with them equalizers that you can make those kinds of changes and adjustments. I might move a couple of the dials around, but for the most part, I'm content to hear it the way that the presets are.
Well, the problem with presets is they control. Whereas like a graphic equalizer or maybe an external sound card, you can control to a greater degree. I guess I don't like the idea of how things started back in the late 80s, 90s, and them limiting me and what kind of sound I could do. Has anybody ever, you feel, it appears, sir, feel very content. And has anybody else ever felt somewhat discontented and felt it would be better to use external sound cards or
I had looked into it just a little bit. My previous amplifier used to have a split function. It had its own separate preamp and then its built-in primary amplifier. And on the back panel, there would be like a solid bar going from the preamp to the main amp. And it would be like it looked like it was plugged into the center of an RCA type connector. And it gave you the option of pulling that out and routing the sound then to a sound processor or a separate equalizer, whatever you'd want to do, and then funneling it back in to the main amplifier, which you would still control the volume with. The current one doesn't have that capability anymore. Of course, I didn't think I needed it, but were you going to try to do something like this if you have your own amplifier and it doesn't have that capability? Probably something manufactured up to, let's say, 2015, 2017, somewhere in that range and earlier, and yet still with some of the protocols that you might want. If you could find one that's used that has that, then you could investigate in having different kinds of sound processors.
Thank you.
And one of the things too that you might want to, that we talked about briefly, was the calibration of your sound. And that sort of takes the place of the graphic equalizer, because you're going to tune your room to get the best sound. So just think about that too. That's part of the setting up process of your equipment.
How about external sound, an external sound card when using a PC? What do you think about that? You know, that much more professional.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with using an external sound card.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy, you are on. It's your turn for a question.
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. Mike showed us the list of speakers, and we've been talking about, that's the most important part. And in the demo or the online, we saw anywhere from, the $600–700, on up. But you also, which didn't include in your presentations, either of you, talking about the need for a good amplifier, because without the amplifier, I guess you can't use the speakers. What are we talking about, in general money terms of a good amplifier? Because you've got to include that in your whole kit, because one can't work without the other. So we've got $600–700 to start with in speakers. Now, what are we talking about price wise in terms of amplifiers?
Ray, you and I have the same one, so why don't you start?
Okay, and I've had mine for I think 2 years now, and they've kept the same model because it really is good. I think I got mine on sale, and I don't remember what time of the year, if there was anything special, but it's probably in the $400 range. And that might be a little bit more than some of the others, but I don't know how about my colleagues here today, but once I find a brand that I like, I stick with it. And I've been, I used to like Kenwood a lot. When they moved away from home entertainment, Sony became my go-to product. So I always look to provide my home entertainment with Sony products if they meet my goals of price and performance.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. My favorite brand is Denon, and my newest receiver is probably, I'd say, 5 years old, and it replaced a previous Denon, which was far more expensive than the one that I bought. And I think I paid $500 for the newer one, and the newer one has more capabilities than the one that was twice the price. So I think the thing I look for in a receiver is the number of connections I can make, and that's something you can consider. And say, for instance, if you want at some point go to vinyl, and you need to have a record player to do that, you want to make sure that the equipment that you're going to purchase will accept a turntable. And turntables have a magnetic cartridge, which requires a separate amplifier, which is normally built in to the receiver or the preamp. So that's something you need to consider, is just look for the connectors that you're going to need. If you're going to need 2, 3, or 4 HDMI connectors, say, for instance, to connect other equipment, take those in consideration. I don't think the money part is really that critical anymore, because there's really a lot of fine receivers out there on the market at different price points. I still think the most important place to place your money is speakers, because those are ones that you would probably not replace as frequently as you would your amplifier or receiver. I think I'm on my third or fourth, maybe my fifth receiver now over the years, and I still have the same speakers.
Cool.
My presentation talked about sound bars, and you saw the first two of the so-called best 5 of modern sound bars, and it's already about 6 or 8 months old. There's newer ones out there now. So to me, and Greg did talk about how about an external sound bar, or maybe I heard you say sound card, I'm sorry. But the point for me was, I never considered a sound bar, because I said, all right, well, that's if I can't afford, a full speaker system. But now the sound they're getting out of it with the computer that's built in, and actually having a good portion of what the receiver circuitry is, which will let you plug other items into it with HDMI, you could get a whole system, which would be the speakers and the amplifier built into a single appliance for probably half the price, maybe 2/3 the price of an independent system. And the question then is, will it sound as good? I don't have the answer to that question, but I would like to hear some of these modern ones in an audio environment, box store, wherever, to see if that's even a choice for somebody that I could recommend. It looks like they're going in that way.
I agree completely with Mike. And the big advantage is they do not take up the same amount of room that a 5.1 or a 7.1 might. And if you're living in a smaller home or apartment, etc., then that would be the way to go.
Can I jump in on that?
I have a comment and a question. The comment is, if you're shopping for speakers and you can get them at Amazon, apparently they're having another Prime Day, and don't forget Black Friday. So don't rush out and buy anything until you check the sales if they have them. And the other thing is, where do JBL speakers rank in this day and age? Because they were my go-to speakers back in the day when I was into this kind of stuff.
I would say they're still very high up there. Good quality, always have been good quality speakers, and always have a good name.
Cool. My setup just went out the door a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully somebody will enjoy using it like I did. Steve Parker, you're on.
When I worked for the CBC, Canadian Broadcast Corporation, the CBC radio, all the speakers we used in there were all JBL.
Oh,
and they had we designed a recording booth, well, not a booth, but a recording studio. And we used $100,000 JBL monitors. And these things, oh my God, they were well beyond anything you'll ever see in any stereo store. But anyway, what I was wanting to say was the speakers Mike was just talking about, I bought a couple of those, and yeah, they're a lot better. The ones I've got are audiophile monitor speakers, and they've got the amplifier built into them, as well as the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and the whole bit in them. And wow, what a difference. I always thought that you had to have a subwoofer in order to get the full spectrum range and the rest of it. These things, no. In fact, it doesn't even have a sub in or out on them. You can't even plug a subwoofer into them. And I thought, well, so I was reluctant to even bother getting them. But I am not sorry I bought these, because they are absolutely fantastic. And if you look at the frequency response on it, they'll go down to 40 hertz. And anything below that is is pretty much overkill in subsonics anyway. So you don't even need a subwoofer with these things. So that's been my experience with them.
Thank you. Mike, is it sofa baton or couch baton?
No, you're right. Sofa baton. Thank you.
Okay, so for those of you who wanted, when I Googled couch baton, it came up sofabaton.com.
That's it.
Okay. John,
when using the Plex product and in streaming, how do you log into Netflix or and other streaming services?
Sure. With Plex, you're really working off your own Plex server where the movies are stored. Now, they do have, if I'm remembering correctly, the option to get other service. I don't use it. If I want to watch Netflix, I just go to my Netflix account or my Prime Video account. When you have your movies on Plex, you're really not streaming through another service. You're streaming your own movies that you've saved on your server.
Oh, okay. So you can't stream then.
I'm not remembering whether or not there is a icon for Netflix. I don't think so. It'll work in the what I call the Discover, where you tell the Plex server what services you are streaming separately, and it'll come back and let you know when there's a movie that you're looking to watch is available, or if it is available now, it'll tell you, and then you just sign into your Netflix or Hulu or whatever it is the normal way.
Oh, I see. And in the Plex, what you showed on the screen, it sort of looks like the Kodi product. Are you familiar with Kodi?
Only in the name, and I know I've looked at it a little bit. Yes, they are both servers, a media service, and
Okay.
people that do like Kodi as well.
They just look alike.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And Judy, that's Kodi spelled with a K.
thank you. Kodi, right?
Yes.
Or Y. Okay. Tom Sweet, your turn.
Thank you, Bill and panel. Really cool. For Kevin Beauregard, on your audio video delay, if it varies by source, you'll have to look at the source for an adjustment, or on the set for interface specific delays. For example, if you have a streaming box like a Roku, some other in a Blu-ray player, and a couple other things, but only one of those is off in sync, try and adjust it on the source device, or say, for example, Roku's on HDMI 1 and Blu-ray's on HDMI 2, you would look for delay settings on that particular interface. If it's across everything, then you're going to look at the main set delay. But you need to first characterize whether it's consistent or varies by interface. And good luck.
It says thank you.
Thanks, Tom, and I love it. He's on the younger side for us, and I loved his way cool comment. I'm 1,000 years old, but I use that terminology, but that's because I'm in SoCal.
Yesterday, I couldn't find the phrase, all of us, even a blind squirrel finds it out sometimes. Yesterday, I had absolutely no success. This morning, it went better. I was glad.
Very good.
Thank you, everybody.
Any more questions? We love questions. Come on, you guys. Inquiring minds want to know what? This is your chance. Richard from Australia. Good job, guy. Love to see you here.
Just to comment on the video side of the equation, most of our user groups have been making quite good use of video projectors rather than those flat screen TVs. Just wondering whether you make use of those video projectors over there very often.
I don't have any experience. Sorry, Richard.
I think I mentioned, you know, that was an option in one of the slides in my presentation and said, we're not, you know, we wouldn't be covering it. I think that the biggest problem is finding somebody in our group that has a video projector with a screen that then could participate in a future presentation if we decide to do it.
The only ones I know with a video projector have don't use them anymore, and they've converted their movie room into something much more with today's technology.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Kurt?
Yeah, a comment about projectors. I think you'll find it very difficult to find a projector that can match the resolution of a modern LCD screen, LED screen. That's a big problem. It's unusual to find projectors in my experience anyway that'll do better than 1920 by 1080, and there aren't very many of those.
Particularly for home use. I know the projector that we have at our club that we use, the picture is not very bright, but we're talking about a $2,000 projector, and I think to get one that is that equals or matches what you find on the LCD is going to be far more expensive. So for home use, because they still use, you know, the projectors in movie theaters, but we're talking about really high dollar equipment. But just for the home consumer, I don't think you can find a projector that is with the average person's price range.
And I'm finding there aren't hardly any clubs out there, member groups who have that kind of money to buy that kind of projector. And I've also found many of the groups are going directly from their laptops to a big screen TV mounted on the wall wherever they meet, and they're loving that.
Right.
One less thing to haul in.
One thing too is that the size of the room, projectors are kind of restricted in how, you know, the size of the room is the focal length that you're going to use between where the projector is mounted into the wall that you're going to show it on is a factor. So I don't know if home projectors are that beneficial. You can get a lot of better usage out of a large screen TV.
If you look at Judy's background, which is the same as John's, you'll see that she's sitting in a home theater. And if I make it out correctly, there's a screen down at the end of the room, and over Judy's head, I think that's the overhead projector that's mounted and then shooting down at it. So for upscale homes, and we have a number of developments in the Orlando area, and I'm sure a number of you are all aware of upscale developments, if not actually living in some. The new build to order or custom homes, the people who, let's say, golf pros and football and soccer players and the celebrities and so on, or magnates, anybody who's got the money, that's the direction they go in, and they still put a screen up because they want to go to a theater. But and the cost to get, say, a 120-inch screen on an LCD is still in the multi-thousands. But when I went shopping for my 75-inch, which was prohibitive 5 years ago, if it was even available, the big ones now were 85 inches, and we're right up there, you know, in the 2,000 to 3,000 or even 4,000 or 5,000 range, depending on what their specs were. So if you look at the cost of a projector versus the cost of a high-end LCD, which may be 30% the cost of a projector, you know, I think that's the direction you'll find most people going in.
Yeah, I'd say that installation that Judy is sitting behind, that's probably between $100,000 and $200,000 installation. Just looking at it.
John, I didn't know we were that wealthy. It's very,
I can just dream. I
Yeah.
was gonna say that even my Buffalo Wild Wings has converted the last of their half dozen projector screens all to, you know, LEDs, big ones, because of not having that distance and clarity. So now all the TVs.
and I think I'll be happy with my 65-inch, and I do have one kid who wants a 75, so I'll tell them the prices have gone down lately.
The,
Oh,
the
my
70
Ungerman.
well, the 75 that I looked at, I started looking at about a year ago, and it was pretty close to $3,000 when it first came out. I see what the Consumer Electronics Show, you know, reviews and what the new things are going to be that year. And then midsummer, they had come down to about $2,500. And in the fall, they were about 24, 23. And pre-Black Friday, because Best Buy doesn't like to wait until Black Friday, they had their pre-deals out. It was 1,800 something. So
Wow.
I said, I can't wait any longer.
I've often say electronics is the only industry where each year the prices for the same product get less and the quality is more.
Yep. Kurt, your hand is still raised. Do you have more comments or questions?
Yes, I do. And in fact, I was just reminded of an ad that used to run in Computer World many, many years ago that said if the auto industry had done what the computer industry has done over the last 30 years, you'd be able to buy a brand new Rolls Royce for $1.98. And I forget what the astronomical mile per gallon would be.
I remember that.
But what I really raised my hand for, and maybe it doesn't pertain to home theater specifically, but I've been involved in looking at Zoom hybrid meetings and things and bringing them together and showing things, particularly in our church environment. I have one room that has an overhead projector, and it's both a beautiful room and a terrible room. Okay, it's beautiful in that it's very functional and it tends to be bright, and it's just terrible because there's no place to put a solid state display. We have to use a projector in there, okay, with that limitation. But we've got some other meeting rooms that are a little bit smaller than that, don't have all of those things. And I've been looking at those and saying, I can take, and these are rooms where we traditionally have used projectors, and decent projectors at that. And I've looked at them and I've said, you know, for $1,000 or less, okay, I can get a quite adequate 65 or 75 or 85-inch TV to use as a monitor and plugging it into a laptop. And the quality of the display that I will get, the sharpness that I will get out of that in these environments will beat a projector any day of the week.
Mm-hmm. And you can donate it to the organization where you meet, and they can give you free rent forever. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, you know, our club's in the process of moving, and we've kind of discovered that in the fellowship hall room that we will have our meetings with our projection screen, we may not be able to get it dim enough to be able to see well enough. And so we're thinking, well, maybe we'll need to go the route of a TV screen that will not worry about that light coming in the window that we can't board up. So.
And his was one of the groups I was talking about. This is it, you guys. Mr. Kennedy's just about to walk us off.
I think John had a question he was going to propose.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
No, John. You.
No,
Weren't you going to ask about future?
Oh, yeah,
A
yeah,
survey?
that'll do that when we close up. No,
Okay.
we'll throw it
All
to
right.
Tom.
I told you he was young. He remembered.
Okay.
That wasn't a hand, it was just a thumbs up.
Oh, that
thank-
was, yeah.
Yes.
Thumbs up, thank you.
I didn't look close enough.
I got that, Tom.
Yep. So if there are any questions that haven't been answered or that you didn't want to ask yourself, jtallure@apcug.org, and then she can pass it on to whoever can answer that. If you are interested in having another workshop on home theaters and other things involved, just send a email to jtallure@apcug.org, and all you need to do is just put in the subject more home theater. Don't need to write anything else. She knows that you're saying more home theater, and so that'll help us see if there's an interest in moving on, because we're always interested in what do people want to know about. What do you want to know about, Judy?
Thank you to our three presenters. Excellent presentations. I'm sure that everybody who attended today learned a whole heck of a lot more about putting a home theater together or tweaking the one that they've got, or have decided, oh, gosh, gee, a little expensive for me. But we're always looking for presentations. You can do a singleton, and we have 2 presentations back to back at a Wednesday workshop, or you could put a team together like this. I sent an email to Bill James several months ago about, do you think a home theater presentation would be a good thing to have? And over time, it has evolved, and we're having it, our last meeting in September. So sometimes they happen quick, sometimes they don't, but please volunteer. I personally like to hear new speakers giving the type of presentations they get, and to expand to my knowledge. I am off my soapbox.
And as Judy said, we are now at the end of September. Unbelievable that we are moving into the last 3 months of 2022. We'll be back again the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th week of October with workshops. Please offer your assistance or give us the ideas. I'll do another heads up for November. We'll be having our Saturday safari, and also in November on that same Saturday, we'll be having our annual meeting following that. So share with us on that. Well, that's been good. It's been a good one.
Are your brains going like this?
My pocketbook is.
Well, I know that.
Yeah. I want to thank Ray and Bill, and especially Mike, being able to sit there calmly through the storm that's coming, and I guess that's helping keep him safe. So I'm hoping that when we finish this, we don't hear that as soon as we finished, all heck broke loose and stuff like that. So we wish you safety, and anybody else who might be from the Florida area that was on with us. And we'll see everybody again next month for another round of Wednesday workshops.
And you will receive a copy of all 3 presentations, plus Mike Ungerman's live link list. And if you do have questions for them, the answers will be included in the follow-up material.